And he
Isn't finished.
Yes, but I'm just trying to mark a milestone, all right? Let's celebrate the steps in the way. All right, we'll get going again, counselors. All right, so we are now on item 7. This is page 57 of the agenda. This is the endorsement of the Waikato Regional Biosecurity Strategy 2022 to 2032. Just in terms of how we'll get through this.
happy to move.
Happy to second.
All right, I'm gonna, well, no, I don't want to, rob you of your moment in the sun here, Patrick.
Do I get too many of those?
So take it and be quick about it. Anything you'd like to?
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'll keep it very, very brief. I guess just at the inception of the Regional Pest Management Plan Review in 2018, we had an objective to create a bit of a more efficient and effective system. We canvassed our colleagues around the country for advice, and one of the things they advised us to do was pull apart the rule book from the program or the strategy. So we have done that over the course of the last 4 years. I've tried to articulate the process in a concise way in the report, so I won't go into any more of that. I'm really proud of the strategy. The team have worked really hard on it, I guess, and in terms of operationalising it, there is a section on it at the back of the strategy, and in addition, there is a piece of work that's still required once the Regional Pest Management Plan goes through the appeal period over the next 15 days to write an operational plan which will bridge between the strategy and the RPMP.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stu, I know you've got your light on first, but I do want to go to Councillor McPherson. No, you have to go? Okay, off you go, Stu.
Not sure why you were going to bypass me. Have I been naughty?
Oh, no. It was a prearranged plan.
Oh, prearranged plan, right. Oh, best laid plans, eh? Yeah, as chair of Integrated Catchment North, and I'm sure my colleague backs me up, my fellow chair from the south, I think it's a great piece of work, Patrick, from you and the team. Well done. And I like what I especially liked about it is that you have built in the koi and the geese, and you've listened to councillors. Mm-hmm. And I've seen lots of little things through there where you've actually listened to councillors' concerns. Fred's, Fred's with the geese, mine with the koi, and you built that into strategy. So, yep, great piece of work. And as you know, one of the few times that I actually happy to move these documents, so I'm happy to move this one, definitely. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Councillor White.
Oh yeah, just a few questions. Just on the very first bit, page 61, I think it is, where it has the cover. It's got like what the photo is. It says it's a kokako chick being banded by ecologist Amanda Rogers. Is that actually the photo that's on the cover? Because it doesn't. Later on. It's later on, is it? Okay. Could just be the way mine's looking in. Sorry, it was just page. I was just looking at the very first page where it's got draft and it's got the picture of the kids there with a box. It says that the cover is a kokako chick being banded by ecologist Amanda Rogers. Is that the right photo? Or is...
Good spotting.
Okay, if you could just do something about that, that'd be great. Just page 79, where it's talking about the carryoid project and where it's got the carryoid project setting trap lines. Can I just ask, is that still operative? It's got the photo there of the people who are involved in that. Is that still fully operative? Because I know that there were some dramas around funding of that and a new group wanting funding and Fred saying that they didn't have enough funding to continue. So I just wanted to check that we're not putting something in there that's no longer
The Arosha-led Kareoi restoration project is going really well.
Okay, so that's fine. That's all right. Just wanted to check that. Also, just a question, page 91, where it's got small-scale management programs can be utilised for any unwanted organism. To undertake a small-scale program, the council must put out a public notice and can then immediately undertake direct control without needing to prepare or review the RPMP. What is classed as a small-scale program? Like, do we have a specific definition for what a small-scale program is?
Yeah, it's defined in the Biosecurity Act. It is another tool that is separate to a regional pest management plan. And it would be if an incursion of a species that isn't listed in our plan happens in the Waikato, we can pull a small-scale management plan together. It has to come through council, of course, to quickly react to that situation, but we have nothing in train or anything at the moment.
Okay. Also, I just wondered, page 93, because we talked there about community-led projects and programs, etc. in there. And I just wondered whether we could actually say somewhere that landowners have a say about what tools are used on their land, because you've said that to me quite a few times about the PPCA, that it's a conversation and that the landowners get to have a say about what pest control tools are used on their land. Is that something that we can add there?
The strategy probably isn't the place for that. It's more the operation or plan, or I'm not sure if the RPMP is it. It's because it's not in the tools, so it would be more in the operational plan.
So I thought when we talked about this once before, you said it would be in the strategy, in the biosecurity strategy, that would be the place to raise it.
Possibly, it is. I mean, it's quite detailed, but I personally probably think it's in the middle, so it'd be the operational plan, which talks about the actual implementation of this, rather than
I think what Councillor White's getting at, though, is in terms of communications with individuals. So if the operational plan is the appropriate place for that, where does a landowner get opportunity to see that? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I think it's important that they know that, and so it would be useful to have that in the strategy, I think.
Yeah, we can put something in there along those lines.
I would appreciate that if that was in there. And the only other thing was and it's really just a possible typo, page 97, where it's got down in Appendix B, look out for new pests and diseases. I think that needs to be look out as two words, not look out as one word. I think when you're using it as a verb, it would be look space out, not look out.
All right.
So yeah, that's my only thing.
Great, thanks, Kathy. Do you want to turn your light off?
Yeah.
Andrew, did you want to?
Yeah, I do. I think Kathy raises an interesting point. Is this a fine? In fact, no, it's not even a fine line. The BSA, the Biosecurity Act, I would have thought enables some agencies to deploy methods and tools that some landowners or interested parties would take exception to. Moi Ho would be a case in point. I think that the strategy.
That's not a good example. That's not the Biosecurity Act. That's the Department of Conservation doing aerial finality operation.
Yeah, biodiversity, second cousin. I think what Kathy was saying, and what I think I'd have some merit in thinking about, would be the strategy should speak to the ability of a landowner to influence or comment on the tools that are deployed, and that the specifics of the tool that's used would be confined, as you say, to the plan. But I think someone reading this document probably needs to take some comfort that the council and its strategy document is not going to walk roughshod over the interests of landowners, but it will listen to the interests of landowners. But I don't think the strategy is giving landowners the right of veto.
So what we've always said is relationships are the key for us. If we can't maintain good relationships, we have nothing for our program, zero. There's no point having it. And the way that we work is the Biosecurity Act gives us the ability to do the work. It doesn't give us the ability to force a particular methodology on a landowner. But it allows you to get on and do the work, but it's always a negotiation. And you know, you can talk about the pros and cons of different methodologies and work with something that works in a particular situation, which is where we try and get to, which is why we need a range of tools in the toolbox for each situation. Yeah, so I mean, I can.
So I look at my own situation where I've only just got rid of TV on the farm, and there was a lot of 1080 used in the land around the farm. I didn't have a problem with that. If I was a landowner that objected to the use of 1080, would I have been able to say, I want TV out of my herd, but I don't want you using 1080 on the bush that's juxtaposed it? And I think the answer to that is no.
Yeah, so what I guess the approach that we take is, our budget's for a Toyota Corolla, it's not for a Rolls Royce. So if we had the Rolls Royce budget, we could go and do whatever people wanted, and it would cost a lot.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think if you are going to include any words in this in reference to what Councillor White's point was, that alongside it, it would need to include words around who carries the additional cost of that. So, yeah. All right. Okay. No other comments? There's nobody online. We've got a recommendation. Anything in addition you want on that? Right. And we had a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? And division recorded. Councillor White voted against. Motion is passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right. Okay, now we're picking up speed. This is it. Here we go. All right, we're now on item 8. Item 8, which is the draft sustainable infrastructure decision-making framework, or the SIDF, or the CDF, or the, I'm not sure. If. Okay, Tracy, would you like to introduce this?
Yeah, Madam Chair, look, this is just rounding off the process that we've been through with this document over the last couple of years. I would remind councillors that we've had workshops on this draft. When did we have those? The 26th of April and the 17th of May. So you have seen the document. We sent it out. It was 12 megs. It was a big, scary document. So Tash popped it on your councillor's SharePoint. Really, I'll hand it over to Mike and Greg, who will just tell you where we're at in the process with this. This is a seminal piece of work, really, in setting the agenda with the chair. It was noted that all the matters that you've looked at to date have been required by statute or some kind of statute thus far in the agenda today. This is something where council itself took a lead in wanting a really good framework to help us with some of those big decisions that are going forward. So I'll pass over to Mike and Greg.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of slides just to reintroduce the topic. And as Tracy said, we've sort of been through this several times now. So the purpose of today really is to seek your endorsement of the draft SIDF, so the Sustainable Infrastructure Decision-Making Framework. We're at a point where we've taken it as far as we can go. We've workshopped it with iwi partners and got their feedback on the draft and made significant changes to the draft as a result of that iwi partner feedback. But we haven't really yet talked to our wider community, our stakeholders about it, and that's where we're sort of keen to go to next. And so very much looking for the committee's endorsement of that approach. This slide we put up at the start each time we've had a workshop. It's really talks about the size of the prize. So several $1 billion of investment in an asset base that's worth currently around $650 million in flood protection and land drainage assets. So a very significant investment for the region. And as Tracy said, Council had recognised that with some of the pressures coming on the system, the challenges, that we need to do we need to improve the way we look at the investments that we make and ensure that we have a robust investment framework around it. Just very briefly, SIDF is primarily it's around investment decision making, utilising both the Treasury's Better Business Case approach and also some tools from Waikato corridor management plans to provide us with a framework that takes locally defined programs of work and sets them against or tests them against regionally defined strategic investment objectives. So it's a process that can be repeatable and helps us identify regional priorities from those local programs of work. So as I said, we really can't go much further without talking with our communities and stakeholders about this, particularly those involved in catchments who bear a large part of the cost of these systems, and also looking for to progress an opportunity around the next LTP, so the 2024-34 LTP, identifying how we might start to incorporate this tool into the LTP process. But as has always been said, this is a long-term transitional process. We're unlikely to be looking at full integration of SIDF into the LTP until that 2027-37 LTP. So next financial year, we would be looking to, with funding we have through the LTP already, continue some development of economic assessment tools, some work going in around a tool that our own economists have developed and has been tested or assessed by Becca. We're also working with University of Waikato on some further development of that tool. We want to test and further develop the strategic investment objectives, which, as you'll remember, is a key part of the whole framework. And as mentioned, engage with those stakeholders that we haven't talked to yet. In the following year, as we prepare for the next LTP, we are exploring how we incorporate it into that next LTP. If possible, given that this could be significant amount of resources involved, we would like to undertake at least one limited test case that's dependent on resourcing. And then the next LTP will have a business case in it around how we do a more robust and comprehensive testing regime and further development of SIDF. So that's it from a very, very quick overview. I hope you don't mind, given that we've recently looked at it.
Thanks for
Thank
that.
you, Chair.
Councillor Husband.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, take great pleasure in moving this document. It's been a long time in the making. It's been well workshopped. It needs to get out to the community now, right? So one of the points I'd like to make sure is that is the affordability of these schemes. And this document, this process is going to enable communities to be able to be part of that process of deciding, hey, we want to hold the line, or we want to do this, or we want to do that, or we can't afford it anymore, we can't do this. So I think it's a great piece of work, Greg and Mike. I think with the climate change and the sea level rise, I don't have my head completely in the sand, only halfway, and I do realise there's something going on in the world, but probably just not as drastic as quickly as other people, but I do know there's something going on. And I think there's going to be some huge conversations that this tool is going to be able to inform going forward. So I think it's, I guess my only concern is that when you said you've spoken with iwi already, I think this council moving forward, and again, I'm not going to be part of it, but this council moving forward, there's a lot of Māori sitting with private land ownership and private title who don't affiliate to an iwi. And we're called ahika. And I brought this up a couple of months ago, 6, 7 months ago. I'd love to see this council getting a bit more inclusive, because it's not very inclusive at the moment. You've got one target and that's where you go, but you're totally bypassing all the other Māori that have brought private land. So yeah, I think I'd love us to start doing that. And I'm not attacking the document. The document's great, but just when you say things like been to iwi, but we're going to quickly get it out to landowners now, or, you know. So yep, I can't say anything more about it. I don't think there should be. Well, I'm hoping there's no discussion on it. It's a fantastic document, and it's going to lead this council well into the future with all the big decisions they're going to be facing us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor McPherson.
How does it sit in the ecosystem for regional authorities around New Zealand? Is there some utility that will come from what we're planning that can be socialised with other regional councils? That being the case, are you talking to your relevant counterparties in the other regional authorities with a view to developing better tool for better capital allocation decisions, and that will cost our ratepayers less to develop because we're putting some of the cost impost on other ratepayers?
So I can speak to my colleagues. So I'm part of the River Managers Special Interest Group, which is councils from across the country that have an interest in river management and flood protection. This topic was discussed several times at that group, and there is an interest in understanding it. I think we are somewhat leading the way in this discussion. I know Bay of Plenty have also undertaken a similar piece of work with a couple of their schemes. As far as funding, I mean, we are funding this because it is our problem to solve primarily. We really got this going, so it's more about making sure that, as we benefit from other councils as well, making sure that we're sharing our learnings and helping to get the tool out there to assist other councils.
Tracy?
If I can just make a comment also. So a lot of the sector are dealing, as Greg said, with the same problem. So we're not wanting to reinvent the wheel. You know, it comes down to size and scale. And I guess if we look at Porirua, if we look at the Hut, if we look at down Kapiti, you know, we've all got the same issues. I guess the one thing that we've identified is those, and Councillor Quayle always reminds us, those key national infrastructure links that go through the northern Waikato particularly. And so from us nationally, this is pretty important. I guess the who pays is the big question, particularly around the work that Greg's doing with the river managers and having the conversations with central government, because some of these matters are legacy matters that we've inherited. One other thing I just did want to say is our territorial authorities are also aware that we've been doing this piece of work. They don't want to recreate the wheel for themselves because they will have infrastructure challenges as well. So they're very keen to start having conversations with us on this framework. What's really important is we don't want, while it needs to have a regional and a local flavour, we don't want to get into the problem of having 16 different tools that essentially 2 or 3 very good tools will do the job.
Exactly
So
right.
that's part of our conversation that we're going out with now.
Yeah, and through you, Madam Chair, I really applaud that. To your point about nationally significant infrastructure, we don't have a franchise on that. Go and look at the Tyree Plains, talking about the Hutt Valley, you know, have a look at that railway line that comes in from Masterton and how it's protected. So while that's an interesting argument, my concern here is we're investing money of Waikato ratepayers, and we're doing it also with Project Reboot. In that case, tens of millions. In this case, a far more modest amount. All I'm asking is that as we invest our ratepayers' money, they have a right to expect that if someone else is going to use the outcomes, there should be some recognition of value. Or do we live in a local government New Zealand ecosphere where, well done, Otago Regional Council, you've done a bit of heavy lifting on some kit, we'll just use that and enjoy our life. Because if that's what we've signed up to, let's tell our ratepayers that now, that we're going to invest in tools that we know economic benefit if it's used by other regional councils. Because that's a different sell when you're on the hustings to, I was party to a council and we invested tens of millions of dollars in building new kit. And by the way, we're going to get that recognised because it's going to be commercialised with other councils. If it's not that case.
If I can give you some surety that, yes, we are part of the wider local government New Zealand ecosphere. We're also part of the regional sector ecosphere. So while we may have done some heavy lifting here and some of our other councils will benefit, we also benefit from others heavy lifting in other spaces. So we do. We have done in our regional coastal plan and some of the work that has been undertaken by other councils. We've rung them up. We've said, hey, Northland, hey, Bay of Plenty, hey, Canterbury, hey, Southland, hey, Marlborough. What have you done? And there's some technical reports that we've gone, okay, we can use that. Also in other work that we've done, particularly, I would say, in freshwater implementation, the work that Brent is doing with other councils leading the way, particularly ECAN. So there is a collegiality in that regard.
And further to the topic, for example, Environment Canterbury have just completed a report on their recent flood events, which builds on a business case for central government funding. So that was included in the previous ICMC agenda, which is another example of us benefiting from that from a national perspective. What I'd also say, though, is that the regional sector does have a collective work program, and there will be future opportunities to take what we're doing and look at, is there actually a piece of national work that could be done to take this further?
Thanks for that. Councillor Strange.
Thank you. Yeah, just noting that the upcoming LTP is going to have a few hefty projects in it. Yeah, so whoever's on next council, yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah, just wondering, with one of the previous ones today, the aquaculture one, they had, no, not the aquaculture, the pest one, they had photo credits. Just a little bit juvenile maybe, but yeah, and this one, there's a few photos about photo credits. Yeah, just my curiosity is like, oh, where's that? But yeah, if we could add those in as well, that'd be good. And with most documents, the abbreviations and the acronyms make for quite tricky reading. I did note there was a glossary, but didn't have a page number. Yeah, it just takes a long time to read. But yeah, yeah, thanks for that. And I think we are asking the right questions, around who pays and making it affordable. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Strange. I've just mentioned at the end of the last workshop, I had a conversation with Councillor Nicol, and she mentioned that the report, and absolutely agreed, the document itself does make for very heavy reading. Her suggestion was a two-pager, 1 or 2 pager to just put things into plain language. I've made a first attempt at that and probably needs quite a bit of help from our comms people and others to make sure it is readable. It's a complex document, and thank you very much for the comments about the photo credits. I think, yeah, we can address that.
Great, thank you. Councillor White.
Yeah, just following on from what Councillor Strange said. Yes, I noticed that sometimes the acronyms, sometimes we actually say what they mean and sometimes we don't. So I think, also we've got quite a few typos in the first few pages. Like I've got listed page 111, 113, 119. So I think we do need a comms person with an editor's eye to go over and just check all of those things. Things like a line is in there as algan. So yeah, just a few things like that. I also wondered whether we could add on page 117 in the bit where we're talking about, so we've actually got sort of the things that are listed there under natural environment, economy, etc. I guess that is specifically about the national direction, but I just wondered, it seems a shame not to have something in there specifically about things like, well, actually probably what I should be saying, because this is more general, isn't it? This isn't talking about any specific area, but I was thinking like the acidification of soils, etc., which is a particular issue for us at the moment. Is that something that we could add? It's not in there, but I thought it is something it's probably a common thing for areas which are coastal, where they've got subsidence and issues of inundation, etc. So I just wondered whether we could have that. But also in there's nothing about the risk to roading. And I thought there would be something specific about roading. It talks about buildings, but I didn't see anything about roading. And I thought, as we're kind of wanting involvement of government around sort of highways and things like that, maybe we should highlight that. The fact that, unless you know that it is in there and I've just missed it. But I did think that was a really important thing to have. But I agree with you. I do think it still needs I think it needs tightening up a bit as a document. And so your comment about readability, it's an incredible document. There's so much work has gone into it. It's really comprehensive, and I congratulate you on that. But I just think in terms of readability, we possibly do need to do a little bit more work on it yet. But I think the comms team can probably help with that quite a bit. But thank you. I think there's a huge amount of work in there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for reading the report in such detail. That makes me very pleased.
We read every word.
I know.
Every word.
Madam Chair, there is a bit of an approach that we take with most of these documents, and if you just have a pyramid in your mind, while I'm talking you through this, the kind of bottom part of the pyramid is your extra for experts, so the technical. The middle part of the pyramid is basically your extra for those interested, and then the top is actually the communications collateral that Mike is talking about in terms of the 2 to 4 pager that strips something complex down to something that's relevant without hopefully losing the kernel of what the document is about. So if you have that pyramid in mind, you've got the heavy technical base, the middle bit for those who are interested, and then that top, the top triangle, which is around the communications collateral. That's, as Mike said, what we took from the last workshop. So that's how we'll be framing it up.
Councillor Nicol.
Yeah, just great work, team, in the sense that reiterating what Councillor Husband said before, really, really important piece of work, and thank you to the ICM side as well for shepherding that through. Yeah, I look forward to supporting it as another step down the path of being able to have these conversations, and really looking forward to seeing what everyone's perspectives are coming back on this, and might stay quite similar, might change. That's the exciting part. Great, thank you.
All right, Councillor Husband, did you have something?
Oh, thank you for allowing me to exercise my right understanding orders to, as the mover of the motion, to have a second say. Mac's right, Madam Chair. whether it's our fish-friendly pumps that we put so much work into, whether it's this document, whether it's duck shooting ponds that I've yapped on about in Whangamarino for 9 years that we sell, whether it's the water to Auckland. And Tipper agrees with us. We've got to be getting something out of this. You know, it's time for the Waikato to start getting something out of this. So maybe it's time to have a look at the whole local government family, because we seem to be constantly winning awards. Right? We do win a lot of awards for things that we can't, because of our spectacular staff. We've got the #1 freshwater scientist in New Zealand here, ex-DRNZ trained. You know, so I think we do. You're right. We have to have a look at that. This document, and it did cost a bit of money to put this document together, 100%. But it's going to save millions in the future. That's 100% for the boys and girls out on those schemes. And I'm not just talking about farmers. I'm talking about people that are in the towns out there that we're going to be able to start using this document to inform us. And it gives us a better standing when we're talking to government about trying to get funding into these schemes. You know, it's all a big pot, and this document is critical to going forward with those schemes into the future. Yeah, so, yep. But it might fail without a seconder. So.
I'm happy to second it. Oh, Councillor Story on the second. All right. Good stuff. Nothing else? Nobody else? No lights? Good.
Oh,
Sorry. So where we've got that about approving it, are we going to say subject to some of the other things that you've talked about doing in terms of comms, etc., doing, and you know, all the small comments that people have made around readability, etc.? Are we just going to say subject to
Madam Chair, I
read
would,
changes or whatever?
It remains a draft
Okay.
document.
yeah, and I would think the issues raised as they were at the workshop, as they have been today, around please make our comms as user-friendly as possible goes without saying.
Right, okay, so we don't need to put that.
All right, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well done. Thank you for that piece of work. I know that a lot has gone into it, and really appreciate the efforts. All right. Okay. Last decision-making, or just last decision item on our agenda is item 9. So this is the Waikato Regional Council statements on the Thames-Coromandel District Council Shoreline Management Plans. This is on page 250.
Madam Chair, we've got Alejandro here to help us out. What I would take councillors to is our comments that we are looking to lodge with Thames-Coromandel, noting this isn't a formal submission. It's not a formal submission, so that's why it is comments. We did our best to encapsulate the conversation that we had at the workshop, I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, on this matter. And really, I will pass over to Alejandro. I will draw members' attention. There was some recent media and it's on the Stuff website about this matter last week. Just like to say to council that that is media that is there. That was not incorporated in what we've got before you. But I did just want to make members aware, so they are aware that there is a wider conversation going on in the community. So over to you, Alejandro.
Kia ora, Tracy. Kia ora, Madam Chair, and kia ora, councillors. As Tracy mentioned, the board follows the request from the 10th of March, Climate Action Committee, following then on the 17th of May with the council workshop on the shoreline management plans. And so that's pages 250 to 257. You'll find that I have put the responses to some of the notes that we collected at the end of that workshop in page 257, and the letter with the comments to TCDC are in pages 254 to 256 of your agenda pack. Essentially, The letter highlights the need for TCDC to work with us in the implementation of the project. We are cognizant and conscious of the fact that we did not get a seat at the table in the plan-making process. So we're extending the invitation for them to consider our involvement in the implementation of the plan. Following the feedback that we got, mainly from Councillor Tech, we have requested that an explanation and clarification about inclusion of specific hazard data related to vertical land movement is included as part of our response. So that is what you see in paragraph 4 of the letter, and it relates exclusively to the Thames area, which is policy unit 2 as identified in the shoreline management plans. That is, in a nutshell, the result of the workshop and what is in the contents of the letter.
Nice.
So happy to comments, questions?
Councillor Tag.
Thanks. I'll be making a comment here and I'll make sure I speak fully to it. Look, first of all, I think this is a very good letter. I think it's suitably robust, which is what's needed. And the only other comment I'd make is, it's really sort of quite a nice feeling to feel listened to on these issues. I know I've been banging on about them for many times, well, dating back, I think, to well before I was elected. So one of the pleasing things is just what Alejandro's mentioned, I think, is the issue of governance. We can't just let that lie. And, that needs to be sorted before we really go any further with this. And maybe that has to wait for the next triennium because there'll be some political changes coming. And I do think we need to consider, it was suggested that just be one councillor. I don't think that's sufficient. We would need, I think, to see an equal representation along with the Territorial Authority and iwi, if this is to be a meaningful engagement at that level. So those are just some introductory comments. In terms of the letter itself, I have some sort of minor suggestions to make, and overall the letter's great, but I think in paragraph 4 it talks about Thames Policy Unit 2. It's actually also Policy Unit 3, as Monetary is separated out as a separate policy unit. So these issues relate to both of those policy units. In subparagraph A, it's a really good reference to that 2018 report. But in fact, Tonkin and Taylor have been reporting to the council on vertical land movement since at least 2000. 2000 is when their first annual report came out. So, and there's also data that's available, publicly and available to the council on other locations other than Monetary. So if there could be maybe some reference to known vertical land data for other locations other than the one referenced in paragraph A. In paragraph C, it's right to talk about the serious issue of land subsidence for Thames, but the NZC Rise maps mostly show the land as uplifting, but in and around Whitianga, they actually show subsidence as well. It's albeit at a much lower rate. But even that, like even 1 or 2 or 3 millimetres of subsidence can have a significant impact on the timing of responses and so on. So maybe a reference to other locations there. Similarly, in paragraph E, it talks about hazards for Thames only. And then in paragraph G, there's a suggestion that information on vertical land movement, if it's not incorporated, then that raises problems. But I think it perhaps should also refer to also all likely hazards. So there's some issues which are outside of scope, which if they're not communicated is also a problem. And overall, I think paragraph G it's a very long sentence. Maybe it could be broken down into some bite-sized bits. I found it a bit sort of clumsy in its
How I write, sorry.
Yeah, but overall, thank you for the letter. I think it's a really good effort. Thanks.
Dennis? Any other comments? No? Do you want to summarize what you've heard, or
Madam Chair,
do you
look,
want to incorporate it now, or you want to?
I think the matters raised by Councillor Teague are all very valid. I think if people are comfortable with that, we can incorporate those and make those amendments. I think it is important that if there's previous information to include that, we were just referencing the report that's directly referenced in the SMP, and also if there are other areas. So we will make the changes that are Thames and other areas of the peninsula, just
Sorry.
so it's incorporated.
I did forget one other. In the report itself, it refers to our resolution of February 2022. I think it's February 2021.
Okay, we'll double check
Have
that.
you check that?
22. Yeah. All right, we've got a mover and Councillor Tagg. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Quayle. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, last thing, and I'm just saying, lunch is here, so that's like you're added incentive through this last item. Oh, I do want to. Miffy is joining us from home. I know she's on the road to recovery from the dreaded COVID, and so I want to make sure. I believe that there were some things you wanted to highlight in particular.
Madam Chair, there is one matter that we'll ask Miffy to just introduce, which is, it's not a new matter, but we wanted to make the committee aware of a policy document that's been developed in a side slipstream, which is the Regional Public Transport Plan. We have a committee who is charged with the development of that plan, but as this is the Strategy and Policy Committee, we wanted to make sure that you were aware of this process. We had tried to insert some words in the document, but unfortunately document versions got the better of us, so Miffy will just give a very brief overview of where we're at with that. Over to you, Miffy.
Kia ora. Thanks for that, Tracy. Okay, so the Regional Public Transport Plan, or the RPTP, is a document that Council must prepare under the Land Transport Management Act, and it sets out the proposals for the delivery of public transport in the region over the next 10 to 30 years. So the plan is developed and implemented by the Regional Connections Committee. As Tracy mentioned, they've been working on this and are getting close to having this ready. So it was last reviewed in 2018. The council has chosen, well, the Regional Connections Committee has chosen to do a full review of the plan rather than just a partial one. And it has to be done within a certain amount of time since after the Regional Land Transport Plan is approved, which happened recently. So the key strategic topics identified by the RCC, so the Regional Connections Committee this year, which formed the basis of this review, are achieving zero emissions for public transport, implementing a ridership-orientated bus network for the Hamilton Waikato metro area, so that's Hamilton, Cambridge, Tiamutu, Huntly, Ngaruawahia and Morrinsville. Delivering a regional network that provides connectivity for the whole region, improving interregional public transport, supporting community transport initiatives and partnerships approach for delivering shared transport solutions, anchoring the outcomes of the Public Transport Business Improvement Review, which has been going on, and developing regional guideline standards for the provision of public transport infrastructure. So this report is, the staff are preparing the draft plan at the moment. That'll be presented to the Regional Connections Committee on the 10th of June for endorsement and recommendation to Council, who will be asked to approve the draft plan for consultation at their meeting of the 28th of June. Okay, and in terms of the submission summary report, as always, I'll take that as read. You will note that we have included an attachment giving a summary of the emissions reduction plan, which was released in May. And since we wrote the report, as always, there are a number of new submission opportunities that have arisen. So we're considering those at the moment and deciding whether we make a submission and at what level that submission is made. So just quickly, those are the exposure draft of the proposed changes to the National Policy Statement for Freshwater and the accompanying National Environmental Standards. And so that includes the proposed amendments to the wetland provisions. The Water Services Entity Bill has been introduced into Parliament. We're expecting a call for submissions for that shortly. There's proposed emission budgets. The Reserve Bank is seeking feedback on whether climate change should be taken into account when setting interest rates. There's consultation on the sustainable biofuels obligation. And finally, a draft ACVM notice, which is a notice under the Agricultural Components and Veterinary Medicines Act around fertiliser, plant biostimulants and soil conditioners. So you'll have a further update on the next report to
Great.
SEP.
Thank you for that, Miffy. I'm not seeing any questions. I do have to comment. I love the background. I think so appropriate for the meeting where we did the coastal plan, because you seem to be sitting right in that mean high water spring mark on that paper, on that background. So well done picking that. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments coming through. I think we had a mover and a seconder to receive that report. Just want to put it up on the screen, maybe. That's all right. It's just receiving the report. So I think we had a mover in Councillor Strange, was it? Or Councillor Husband? Oh, McPherson and Councillor Strange. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well done, everyone. 12:24. We'll declare the meeting closed. Thanks, everybody.